Never Stop Candybang is a frequently occurring creative chat with family, friends, and industry artists about storytelling, music, sound, and vision by Pete Candleland and Sophie Sound. In this episode, we invite director Michael Gracey to talk through his passion for sight and sound by breaking down his films, Better Man and The Greatest Showman.
For the next 2 hours, your house is mine!
To be honest, I've always been a little less evolved.
I don't wanna rock, DJ.
Hello, Michael Gracey, and hello, everybody. Welcome to what will be our fourth episode of Never Stop Candybang. We're here with Michael Gracey, Sophie Sound here as well. Hello, Michael.
Hey Pete, how you doing, mate? Hey Sophie. I like how you tiptoed your way into that. Hello, Michael.
From skating babies to French fries musical extravaganzas, Michael Gracey, the Australian film director, gained huge success. First with commercials. Pete remembers seeing them on TV going,
Holy shit.
which then makes sense that he did musicals that led to his worldwide recognition with a massive box office success, starting with The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman.
Holy shit.
Now, 7 years later, with his latest visual masterpiece, the Robbie Williams biopic, Better Man.
Holy fucking shit.
I think, when you look at things and you go, oh, that was worth the wait, And for me, it was 8 years punching to try and do Showman and then 6 on Better Man. You just go, I know, one of these films will get up. Doing it with Leica is 100% the right place for you to be realizing them.
I think so too.
There's so few places where art actually is valued in that.
They're really
respect,
brave. They're really brave, and they push you and all of this kind of good stuff. And Sophie's had some experience with them as well, doing sound, which has been good. So Sophie's area of expertise is she's a sound designer. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we kind of do with the podcast a little bit is kind of sound and vision side of things. So when we do the podcast just by ourselves without a guest coming in, we kind of look from the perspective of the sound world, which will be the music, which obviously Better Man, your history and everything will be super conversational about. And I try and come from the sketching, drawing, kind of scribbling side of stuff.
Great combo.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Better Man is such a result of my lack of focus on sound on Showman. Because on Showman, I completely dropped the ball and thought the sound designer actually brings something to the table. And the person I was working with brought nothing. I mean, not only nothing, they brought bare minimum. Like sound is like, for me, sound is such an enormous part of any creative endeavor. And it's unfortunately people, well, at least I came to it too late on my first film. I thought, that working with the sound designer, I would be presented with ideas and creativity and being a musical, that it would have a musicality to it, all of these things. And that was a mistake on my part because, it was my first film. So I was quite naive to think that I was working with someone who was going to care as much as I did about what the possibilities. There's the mundane. Yes, that person walking has footsteps. Congratulations. You got the footsteps from a canned, you
smashed the footsteps.
Of sound. Yeah. but how about, because it's before a musical number, the footsteps are in the same rhythm as the song, And so there's a little tempo that gets established by the sound of the hoofs on the cobblestones, the sound of the footsteps, the sound of breathing, the swish of a newspaper. All of that can build into a rhythm that then takes us into the music that then...
Beautiful.
There's a million things you can do.
Well, it's that cadence, right? You're talking about getting out of the scene. You've got a real world setting and you're just bridging into your musical moment by the sounds of it, Michael, which sounds fantastic. And as that becomes more stylized sonically, you're probably getting more stylized visually as well, right? And then, is that right?
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, we definitely did that on Better Man, but on Showman, it was Showman was the sound design in Showman was so bad that and it was my fault because I wasn't focused on it in the way that I should have been. You know, I was so focused on the music, the musical numbers, the music, how I was going to shoot and present each of those and the complexity within that I just completely dropped the ball on the sound designer. And I didn't have a sound designer who was passionate about the film. So they weren't offering things up. They weren't going, hey, how about this? And so to me, one of the things I'm incredibly proud of on Better Man is that the sound design is such a big part of the cinematic experience of that film.
Yeah.
And it was me very much saying, no, this time I'm going to get it right. This time I'm going to have those conversations early, and it's going to be interwoven with the story. So I'm a massive fan of it.
Can I ask, like, how did you communicate with the sound person, sound supervisor? It's like in the script, or?
Yeah, not as much in the script. No, it was just conversations. But I will record a lot of our conversations. And I'll screen record. So I'll be talking through visuals while talking about the sound. And then I send those screen records, which is kind of the next best thing to sitting in the room with your laptop and showing something to someone. And so I do that for everything, whether it's sound or visual effects or any review, I record my screen. And so everything, all the references that I'm bringing up, anything that I'm talking about, I can just share that whole screen record with the artists.
That's a pretty good idea.
What's great about that is they can then scrub through it and go back to it and really see.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
and they get to take it in at their own time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hey, so Michael, just going back a little bit, like the steps, we were just talking together before jumping on with you, and I knew your work before Showman, and then from Showman to Better Man. But it's always been music orientated as far as I've seen for the most part, right? So with the commercials and stuff, there were always a big standout, especially around Christmas time, I think, in the UK. What was it that led you to bring in so much musicality and music work into your visual kind of storytelling? Where did that start?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably started, my mum loves musical theatre, so she's a huge influence and used to take me, my brother and my three sisters all off to see musicals when we were little in Melbourne, Australia. And so, I also just think, to me, if I think cinematically, my experiences of growing up in the 80s, the films I loved just had these John Williams scores that defined the characters. Indiana Jones wouldn't be Indiana Jones without that music blasting as he's running over the hill.
100%.
It just, whether it was Superman or Star Wars or whatever it was, the great films of that era, which was so influential on me growing up, they just had these amazing melodies that went with them. And, I always say, like, what interests me isn't necessarily everyone breaking into song and singing and dancing. Boss, I love that. But I just love music-driven narrative.
Yeah.
And I say that going, Quentin Tarantino makes music-driven narrative. His films would not be those films without those scores, without those soundtracks.
Totally agree.
Whether it's the score in Hateful Eight or whether it's the soundtrack in Pulp Fiction, like that music defines those films in such a big way. And I just think it's, in terms of the tools that you have as a filmmaker, whether it's on a commercial or whether it's on a feature, and commercials are really interesting because you're trying to evoke something over 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And it's such a short time. So for me, music is one of the great tools that we have to evoke emotion, to engage people, to have moments of joy, but also have moments that can drop out completely, and then you can just hear someone breathe, and you just go, "Whoa!" Like it just the dynamics between sound design, music, and visuals. There is something about visuals that is we process because we look at it and it goes into our eyes.
It takes a different amount of time, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it kind of works through you in a slightly different way.
It works for you in a different way is the best way to put it. It's an intellectual process. You look at it, you analyze it, you may feel something completely different to someone else, but that takes a little beat to understand. You don't need that same process with sound and with music. It sort of bypasses the cerebral and it sort of touches you here. And so I find it a much more immediate way of engaging.
I love that. That's it. I totally agree with that. And you can listen to music without seeing the video, right? And be completely touched. If they both work in harmony, that's all the better, right? And you can get a little bit more out of it. That's the sweet spot,
isn't it?
That's the spot you're after. But music kind of does work. It touches you on its own. It doesn't necessarily need that music support. But when you're bringing it into like a movie that you're doing, where it is a visual medium, then supported by this thing that can touch you so powerfully, then the two things add up to something even stronger, right? And
completely.
It feels like you've been doing that for a long time, Michael. From the commercials, you were in animation as well at a particular point. I think that was before we got to know each other. But
it was, which is crazy. I mean, I knew of your work, as anyone in animation does. But I mean, I started at Animal Logic. I actually started doing stop motion animation, which is how I got my job at Animal Logic.
Right.
And
are you doing stop motion at that time?
I did stop motion before in Melbourne. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And just on commercials, and then moved into computer animation when I went up to Sydney to work at Animal Logic.
Right.
And then went from there back to Melbourne to work with Peter Webb, which is on Flame, which was digital compositing.
Yeah.
And so it just, in terms of all my earlier work was always sort of based around visual effects heavy ideas, just because I would end up doing all the visual effects myself.
Well, I mean, does that all kind of add up through those years, Michael, into Better Man? Because that is like a VFX. I mean, it's like a VFX masterpiece, really. I mean, I think
the work they did was phenomenal.
Absolutely outstanding. But that must come from your history as well, right?
Yeah, I think it allowed us to be more brave. I think that when you come from, if you're embarking on something that is, animation, you've done so much of it that you want to push yourself. Sophie, I'm sure the same is true with you, that, if you're doing something in the world of sound, you're like, I've done all of these things and I would love to explore this area, this untapped idea that I've always had in the back of my head. The Better Man was definitely a response of like, I don't want to shoot it like it's a VFX film. I don't want to. I want to use vintage lenses, which I know are going to flare out and are going to cause no end of drama for the compositing.
Yeah, but it looked fantastic for it.
Yeah, it just handheld and it just all the things that you would usually not lean into. I was like, the more we lean into that, the more silhouetted he is, the more that literally the light blows out and you can't even see him for a few frames. All of that. I was confident that if we could do it to the level that I hoped, and Luke Miller, the VFX supervisor, really was on board with that, as well as Andy Taylor, the VFX producer, and we were also like the how difficult it is becomes the challenge, and the joy when we get it right.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's really what rallied a lot of artists who've done, VFX films for 25 years. And they were like, I've never done a shot like this.
Nice.
And, it almost killed me, but I could not be more proud of the work.
Yeah. Well, I think because when I think of Pete's work as well, it's like you both you're famous for doing things your way. One is more successful than the other. No,
I don't know. I don't think that's actually true. To be honest, like,
Michael's going to just try and be nice now.
no, I'm not being nice. Okay. I really am not. Like Pete is a god amongst animators, and his work has inspired so many people. Like, his work is, myself included. So, I don't think I have that same influence because, I've had commercial success, which has been amazing, and I'm so grateful. Like, no one would ever let me make a film like Better Man if it wasn't for the success of The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, right.
And that I love, because you just go, for years I was pitching just doing an original musical, and people were just like, you are out of your mind. No one is going to let you do that as a first-time filmmaker.
Yeah. How did you stick with that? How did you get that across the line? Like, Greatest Showman, tell us, Michael, a little bit about that, if you would, because it is such an achievement that for your first movie coming out of the commercial world, I know it took a while, but when you watch a movie and you can see the joy that's in it, that's really important. But I'm sure it wasn't as simple as all of that along the way.
The shooting process, actually, working with that cast was a joy. Peter Cohen was the first AD on the film, and he's firsted everything from the Pirates of the Caribbean films to Birdman, with Alejandro. Like, he's super experienced, and he's one of the reasons that film got made, because I wasn't good at navigating, a major motion picture at a studio, and just in terms of the politics and everything that goes with it. And he's a pro. Like, he's done it so many times.
So he was really by your side during it, kind of taking.
Oh my God,
taking
he
you
was
through
everything.
that kind of web.
He was like, let me tell you, this is what you're going to fight for. Don't bother fighting for that.
Nice.
We can do that anyway. It's not going to cost any money. We're not going to go into overtime.
Where you need to put your focus type thing in the negotiation with the studio and all of that kind of. Hold on to that part of the creative idea and maybe let that go just to play the balance.
And he would say things like, let that go. And, if we can pick it up in a couple of weeks, we're going to be back here and I can schedule it. And he 100% would remember those things. He wouldn't say those things to placate me at the time and then forget it. Then in 2 weeks, he would come back to me and go, now listen, remember how we wanted to get that? I've found a way schedule-wise that we can make it work. It's not going to take us into overtime, so the studio is not even going to know about it. Like stuff like that. You're just like, you just want to hug the guy every day, But what he did point out was, he was like, Michael, this is really special and it's not going to happen on every film. And what he was pointing to was, on the days off, the cast would come down on days that they weren't scheduled to shoot and just sit behind the camera to clap and cheer on the other performers.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And he's like, this doesn't happen. This is really special. And so the joy you feel in the film, that's real. Like, that set was such a joyful place to be that people literally would come in on their days off.
That's amazing. So you start to know at that point that you're onto something then, right?
Yeah.
That must
be
bring
honest,
a real kind of sense of confidence to everything, right?
I felt it when once we were in workshopping it, and it wasn't with all the final actors, but once we were running it in the room, just with people reading it and standing up and singing, I was like, this is giving me goosebumps. So as long as I can protect this and get that up onto the screen. But I did all the same things that I do on commercials, which is, I shot a whole video version of the film ahead of time and cut it together.
Yeah.
And when I say, half the shots were shot in my office with fluorescent lighting.
Yeah.
And, every other shot, I don't have the star, so I'm just putting someone else in to read the lines.
Yeah.
But that version, at least, you can sit and watch the whole film.
And you know that the story's working at that point. You're getting confidence from that, right?
And you work out what you don't need. You're like, I need to get through this faster. When you're reading it, you're like, this is all great. But once you watch it, that's the medium in which it's being presented.
So you're making a bit of a blueprint for it. So when you get
it is
that
100% the blueprint
working, then you take it on set. When you're spending more money, you got bigger teams on there, but you feel that you're filling the blueprint out as opposed to discovering it.
That's right. And also, you've had more time to play with those ideas that are kind of risky, and you kind of think, there's no way this is going to work, but I'm going to try it because I'm only shooting it on my iPhone, so it doesn't matter. Playing, I think, is a huge part of the creative process, and playing while you have 200 people standing around you with a crew and people watching the clock and, line producers yelling and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be like, hi, everyone, I'm just going to play for an hour. Let's just see where this takes us,
I'll get back to you in a bit.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That playing bit, nothing much came out of it. So let's go back to what we were going to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So doing that off the clock, so to speak, is so liberating. It's so liberating.
Yeah, it's relieving and stuff. And that's what you're doing with Showman that you probably took to Better Man as well. We were talking about wondering what those things that you learned from Showman and took into Better Man. That sounds like a pretty crucial part of figuring all of that stuff out.
Yeah, so many lessons. Sound being a huge, huge part of it, and part of the storytelling, which, again, even in that video version, I started playing with the sound, even though it was, the in its roughest form. I wanted to start, seeing where the sound design would take us, and
that's really interesting, though. So even then, early on in the process, you're building the sound design with an understanding, because you kind of get a grip of what you want visually. Which one's coming first? Do you ever play around the other way and kind of build out like a sonic kind of base to then illustrate? Or
that's interesting, because normally what I hear is that people, like, that directors send kind of a blueprint of sound. That, like, do you do the same thing where you already select some sounds out, or?
We do. Like, to some degree, you put in temp sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I did on this was, I was like, I want to get sonic ideas. So even when we're in rehearsal, I was like, I think, I was like, there's something to the audience screaming, which you think feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you mix in with the screams of the girls, some screams of monkeys, all of a sudden it just starts feeling a little bit aggressive and not so enjoyable. Mm-hmm. But you can't hear the monkeys. They're just mixed in with the screams.
Nice.
And so there's sort of this thing where you go, how much do we play with that? How much do you hear the monkeys? How little do you hear the monkey screams?
I love that. It reminds me of something that Sophie did, actually. Just recently, we were working on a car. It was a gangster car, and it sounded sick. And I listened to it, and I asked Sophie, what is that built out of? And it was a rhino. And Sophie said it was a rhinoceros. It was this particular machine. It was the roar of a particular cat. But it was the rhino that really made it. And you're like, holy shit, I love that. Like putting these jigsaw puzzle pieces together that you did that make something so incredible is part of that creative process of the whole thing, isn't it?
But I think also it's a theme, because when you talk about monkeys, I mean, it's a movie about a monkey. So it makes sense to kind of think also, like, how can you integrate that idea into the sound as well?
Definitely. And it it's sort of like, like really early on, I had this idea that, like, when the helicopter's above him and he's fighting with his dad, that I just wanted this sort of low, that you think it's almost a heartbeat as he's yelling at his dad. And it's all under yelling, so you don't hear it that clearly, but the then becomes the
starts to take it over. Yeah.
And it's sort of like, is it a heartbeat? Was it the blades of the helicopter at a distance? And, it was sort of, we're just hearing the lowest thuds. Like stuff like that. I love when I watch that in other people's work. And a lot of it is subliminal. You don't really notice it.
Yeah, it's the stuff that you really do. You feel a bit more than you hear and notice.
You feel
right?
it. Yeah.
Because it's transitions, actually. It's like, how do you transition from one idea to another?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, it is. It's kind of moving from one thing to the other. Better Man does, like, and I know you were just about to say something.
No, because I had a conversation with Nina Hartstone, who won the Oscar for Bohemian Rhapsody, and she did also the David Bowie documentary, and she was also all about like the transitions. And one of my questions was if it wouldn't be better to kind of integrate sound much earlier. And it is all about those transitions where a sound supervisor or a sound designer can come in and say, like, these are great points for transitions where you can bring in these like ideas to bring in rhythm in a different way. To instead of the cut, you can also use the sound, for example, sometimes.
Completely. And I mean, there's moments where you do those hard cuts, and that change of environment is enhanced so much by, that whistle of the wind or the whatever it is that you kind of go in and out of. It's a great sort of reset, and whether that's a hard reset or whether it's a smooth transition, again, playing with that stuff early on. Anyway, the big one for me is in the same way that we sketch our visual ideas, be it storyboard or video camera or previs with 3D. I love to sketch with sound and music, in the same way. So
you create those bridges and those transitions with the music and the sound, and the visuals all come together. Better Man does that so well, from reality to fantasy. It's so effortlessly, like it's poetic the way it moves from one to the other, right? Which is, I guess, it's deeply attached to the sound, and it's deeply attached to the music. And they all work in tandem, where suddenly you're just in a completely different place, but it all makes sense. And it's all there for that emotional kind of punch.
But also like in an emotional place of the character, no? Like where every song represents a different phase in his life. And I think it just all makes so much sense to listen to it, because when I grew up, I listened to Robbie Williams all the time. So I knew all the songs. And then you get the story of those songs through that movie. And it's like, I had no idea that those stories are attached to those songs.
Yeah. I mean, going in, we're like, look, for people who know his music, what you want to do is you want to give it a new context. And hopefully the context is strong enough narratively that moving forward, whenever they hear this song, they're going to think back to this moment, Whenever they hear Angels, they're going to think about Rob's Nan. When they hear Rock DJ, they're going to think about Regent Street. When they hear She's the One, they're going to think about a boat.
That's right. I think it has reset that. It has reset that. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
And I love doing that. It was a real challenge to go, how can we make something that's compelling enough that actually it will change the way people listen to the music in future, But it is definitely that thing where when you're playing with these ideas, it's great to talk about, sketching, but so many of those sketches get thrown out, So many of those ideas, they're
the quick way of just getting your ideas down, right?
And by the way, because they are just sketching, because you just did it on your iPhone, you also you don't have that same attachment. You know what I mean? You didn't render this beautiful thing that took you months and months.
Yeah, you got to allow
throwing that
yourself
out,
to throw it out. Yeah.
Throwing that out becomes a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sketches get looser and looser. The more you learn to be really loose with the sketches. One of the things we were talking about in a previous episode was I used to sit down and do really finalized drawings and get really excited about this idea, and I draw it up and render it up and go, oh, this is going to be really good. And then you've got to throw it out, and it doesn't get accepted, and you're just left going, I just kept wasting my time all the time until I learned how to just really sketch, be really loose and not precious about it. And that is a really long learning process. It's definitely been a long learning process for me to get rid of those ideas and know that I need to probably create 10 to 12 ideas for one that's going to last. Yeah. So to get really disposable about it.
Michael Arndt, who I've been so fortunate to work with on everything I've done, he wrote Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
Nice.
But he talks about, he's like, just get it down. Just get it down. It doesn't matter if it's poetic. It doesn't matter. Just get it down, because it's throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
And just see what sticks, you know? And to your point, only a couple of strands might stick.
Yeah.
But that's what you take moving forward, you know?
Yeah. And then those strands, then you throw another 10 pieces of spaghetti and maybe one sticks then.
Yeah.
And you get a bowl after about 2 years. I think
it's so true.
Quick thing, we have because we have this time limit on the Zoom thing. Should we send a new Zoom link out?
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 sec.
All right. So we'll send that out. I think let's just do that. And then we'll start wrapping up. Actually, is this stuff that we want to definitely make sure that we just cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that question was a big question. So
About Jono?
Yeah, about Jono, because the performance, we've seen the movie the day it came out in London, and the performance from Jono, what's his name now, is really, really good. So what was the casting? What was the casting process? And why did you choose him?
But should we kind of jump onto that on the other Zoom?
Okay.
Yeah, just so it doesn't
Send
get
you
cut.
link and then we'll do it.
Okay, 1 sec.
Me with the floor show, kicking with your torso. Boys getting high and the girls even more so. Wave your hands.
Thank you for listening. More episodes are in your podcast app or our feed. For more information and updates on guests, episodes, and behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you have any comments, feedbacks, or ideas, send us an email at neverstopcandybang@gmail.com.
Classes, music for your masses. Give no head, no backstage passes. Have a proper giggle, I'll be quiet for life, but when I